Hello everyone, Neil Tappin here from Golf Monthly. In this video we are looking at the best wedges of 2018. We have 6 models for you to take a look at and I've had the chance to test these both out here on the golf course for the last couple of days. I've hit a whole host of different shots and also on the launch monitor indoors to see if I can pull together some information for you, to see if I can pick out any trends as to which of these wedges performs the best in a whole host of different categories. Now we have 6 different wedges to show you. The first is the Callaway Mack Daddy 4, then there's the TaylorMade milled grind, then you have Ping's Glide 2.0 Stealth, Titleist SM7, Cleveland's RTX3, and finally Mizuno's S18 wedge. Now the first category we're going to look at is aesthetics, and while I put these wedges back in the bag, I want you to hit the pause button and tell me which of these 6 wedges you think looks the best. I think they all look absolutely fantastic, but I want to see if there's a consensus of opinion out there. I want to see whether there is a trend amongst those people watching this video as to which of these wedges looks the best. So hit the pause button, tell us which one you think's the best, and then hit play. Okay, so we're talking about the looks of the wedges, and certainly on the shelf, I think across the board, these wedges look fantastic. It's been a big leap forward actually for the equipment manufacturers recently. They understand how important it is to have golf equipment that sits on the shelf, that looks really premium, that looks really sleek and cool, and is something that people want to use, and they really funnel all of that into the wedges. I think the 2018 wedge selection is the best wedge selection I think I've ever seen. So on the shelf they all look fantastic. Behind the ball they're all very similar. The top lines, I would challenge anyone to notice a slight difference in any of the top lines. They're virtually the same. Where there is a slight difference is in the shaping of the wedges. So there are 2 that are slightly more rounded, the Callaway Mack Daddy 4 and the Mizuno S18. They're slightly more rounded. The Ping and the Cleveland are slightly squarer, and then you have the TaylorMade and the Titleist. You have the TaylorMade and the Titleist there that sit somewhere in the middle. If it was me, if it was my choice, I think I'd be tempted to go with the Callaway Mack Daddy 4. It has such a generous hitting area. It just feels to me, as somebody, I'm a 5 handicapper, I'm not a pro, my short game certainly has been an area I have struggled with in the past. This just offers me a lot of confidence. It just feels like you're looking down on a lot of surface area to strike the ball. I know that we're only talking about fine margins in terms of the difference between one wedge and another here, but as soon as I set this down, right from the beginning of the test, right through to the end, I just felt confident and comfortable with this in my hands. So, for that reason, if I was picking purely on aesthetics, I'd go with the Callaway Mack Daddy 4. One other thing to mention in the aesthetics category is that each of these wedges comes in more than one finish. If you're somebody that likes a darker finish, there will be an option within each of these wedges that's right for you. Likewise, there's a chrome in each of these. Some of the brands also have a finish that sits somewhere in between sort of black and chrome. So there is something out there for everybody. Now, as you'd expect, with each of the wedges looking so similar, they also feel very similar, and having hit a lot of shots with each of these wedges over the last few days, I can say they all feel absolutely superb. If I was picking one of them, it would be the Ping Glide 2.0, and that was actually quite a surprise to me. It's a surprise because the Ping is a little bit more of a cavity back design, so you might think it's a little bit more forgiving than the other wedges. Again, that might sound like a strange thing to say, but there are forgiving wedges out there on the market. There's a Cleveland CBX that's a bit more forgiving, and I would say the Ping Glide, certainly by the look of it, fits into that category. And if you're talking about forgiveness in wedges, you might think you're giving up on a little bit of feel, but for me, it was the opposite. I thought this just felt so solid through the contact area. In particular, again, this might sound strange, when I was chipping. You might not think that you would really notice the difference between a cavity back wedge when you're chipping, but this one just felt really solid. It just felt like there was a little bit more meat behind the ball through impact. Again, when I was pitching, that little bit more meat behind the ball at impact is something that I noticed, and time and again, when I was hitting shots, I was looking down and thinking, wow, I really like the feel of the Ping Glide 2.0 Stealth. Now, testing spin is obviously really difficult because it all depends on club head speed, it depends on how good the striking is, and it is very difficult to see if there's much of a difference in the different spin characteristics between the different clubs. So what I'm about to tell you, I would take with a reasonable sized pinch of salt, because these factors are very difficult to test in terms of human testing, but I went to Foresight Sports headquarters in Guildford where I did some indoor testing, and to test out the spin, what I did was I hit shots with each of the 58-degree wedges, and I was trying to pitch them between 50 and 60 yards. So the idea was that there would be roughly the same club head speed for every shot with each of the brands, and hopefully, one shot after another, I'd then look at the data at the end and see if I could pick out any trends within the data. For me, a 50 to 60 yard shot is a half shot really with a 58-degree wedge, and so that's why the spin numbers are fairly low. The wedge that came out on top was the Callaway Mack Daddy 4. I was generating 7,498 RPMs of spin with that. Second was the TaylorMade 7,300, and then third was Titleist at 7,225. I think it goes to show that the difference between Callaway and Titleist less than 300 RPMs, which is virtually nothing, and that's because the RNA and USGA have placed very strict restrictions on what the manufacturers can do with their grooves, and the game within spin that the manufacturers are playing is how close can they get to those restrictions, how close can they make their manufacturing tolerances. One thing I would say about the Callaway, the Mack Daddy 4, is that they do have an extra groove at the bottom here. They call it their nip it groove. That might generate a little bit of extra spin, and also they have something called groove technology. It's these raised areas between each of the grooves. Again, they're trying to do what they can to generate as much spin as they can. In my testing, it would seem that it worked. However, I wouldn't say that this is something that you need to base your buying decision on. Okay, so onto the full pitch shot, and again, we did that at the Foresight Sports headquarters indoors using the GC2 quad launch monitor, using premium golf balls, and I hit each of the 54-degree wedges to a target that was set out at 110 yards, which would be my ideal 54-degree yardage. And I hit 5 shots with each wedge back to back, and then looked at the numbers. I didn't delete, the only shots that I deleted were ones that didn't hit the green. The rest stayed in there to see if I could pick out anything within the data. The one thing I did notice in the data was that the TaylorMade was a lower ball flight than the others. It was 3 or 4 yards lower than anything else I tested. It wasn't like it was spinning much more than anything else. So that was perhaps an anomaly. I'm not quite sure why that was the case, but it's worth raising here. The club that spun the most was the Ping. Worth mentioning, that was spinning at 9,527. But for me, the club that I was most consistent with was the Titleist. Take a look at the pink dots. This is the cluster that I was able to achieve with the Titleist SM7 wedges. And I'd say it was the one that I was the most confident using. And for that reason, for the full pitch shots, I'd probably pick the Titleist SM7. Okay, so when it comes to greenside performance, chipping, bunker play, these elements are so personal to you. They will be personal to your technique, the way that you deliver the club to the ball, and there might well be one club within the 6 that I've picked that's exactly right for your game. It is so personal, but for me, from the testing that I did, I had 3 favourites, and that was the Callaway, the Ping, and the Titleist. I just was able to consistently chip a little bit better with these 3. I felt more confident with these 3. And as a result, I think the results for me were a little bit better. But having said that, the results for you, if you were conducting this test, might well be very different. So again, it's one of those things that you have to take with a bit of a pinch of salt. But for me, I had 3 favourites in the chipping and bunker play: Callaway, Ping, and Titleist. Okay, so the value category is an interesting one, and I've got both ends of the spectrum in my hands here. I've got the cheapest in the Cleveland RTX 3. This comes in £109, and then the most expensive is the Titleist SM7. That comes in at £150. So there is a bit of a price difference between them, especially, don't forget, if you're buying more than one wedge. If you are going down the process of getting fitted out for your wedges, then the difference in price can start to add up. All of the other wedges fit between 130 and 140 pounds. They're very sort of much of a muchness. So in the value stakes, I have to say that 109 pounds for the Cleveland RTX 3 is great value. You do not have as many options in this wedge as you do in the others, but don't forget, it looks absolutely fantastic in the bag and behind the ball. It spins really well. It is a solid all-rounder. There is nothing, absolutely nothing wrong with this wedge, and I'm confident that anyone out there will find a setup within the Cleveland that works really well for them. There are more options elsewhere. You might be able to tweak and find something even better elsewhere, but for £109, I think you get an awful lot of wedge for your money with Cleveland. Before I go any further, I will say that if you haven't invested in wedges in the last 3 or 4 years, then now is a great time to do so. The 2018 wedge selection that you have is better than ever. There are so many options, there are so many finishes, and there is not a bad one among them. There is not an ugly looking wedge, there is not a duff performer among them. They all look and perform really well. I'd go as far as to say I'd be happy to put any of the wedges that I've tested in my bag. However, I have been lucky enough to test the 6 best wedges on the market, in my opinion. I choose the 3 in my hands here. The Ping Glide 2.0 Stealth. I really loved the feel of this. I just loved how it felt through the ball, both chipping and pitching. The Callaway Mack Daddy 4, it looks brilliant behind the ball and it just feels so easy to chip with. It's just confidence inspiring for me. And then the Titleist SM7, I pitched really well with it. There are so many different options with it that I'm really confident I'd find a wedge setup that works for me. I've used Titleist wedges in the past. It's probably worth saying, it's worth fessing up. I have used Titleist wedges in the past. SM6 wedges I was fitted for. I really loved them. And I'm sure that if I swap straight into the SM7 wedges with the right lofts, bounces, grinds, it would work really well for my game. And that's why I think that if I was picking my winner in the wedges of 2018, it would be the Titleist SM7 for those reasons. Guys, thank you very much for watching. What do you think of the video? Tell us what you think. Leave some comments below. What would be your choice for the best wedge of 2018? We'd be really interested to hear. If you like the video, give us a like. Otherwise, we will see you next time.